Welcome. Thank you for coming. We're overwhelmed by the wonderful turnout. Thank you for coming. And I'd like to start off the evening tonight by welcoming Rueben George. He's going to give us a traditional greeting and a few opening remarks. And Rueben is an Indigenous community organizer and spiritual leader. He is a Sundance chief and grandson of Chief Dan George, the Oscar-nominated, widely respected Native leader. Rueben is coordinating the fight against the Kinder Morgan proposed tar sands oil pipeline into Vancouver Harbor, and for that alone, we got to give him a clap. This pipeline route is currently the only way this dirty oil is making its way from Canada to the new markets in the Pacific region. The fight has significant implications for Indigenous sovereignty, climate change, and the future of the global oil economy. Rueben?
ACM. Hoichka CM Siaya, Hoichka CM, Chief Skludstan Snot to Tsleil-Waututh, Chief Yopanan Snot to Tsleil-Waututh Squamish. Wow, thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome to the Tsleil-Waututh territory. Really honored to be here. You know, the first thing that I think of is, well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. I was the Director of Community Development for my nation. And you mentioned my grandfather, and he said, anything you learn in college and university about healing, there's a Native teaching that said the same thing. So when I thought about that, and when I was in school myself, I thought about it. And then when I was done, I hired two psychologists. I wrote a grant and hired two psychologists, and hired a slew of elders, and we looked at any successful healing model that was working. And we applied our culture to it. We changed it. We changed it completely. And I remember there's a psychologist that we studied. His name was Liv Vygotsky. And in the 1920s, he did simple studies on people with culture and people without culture. And what he found in those studies is the ones that had culture lived longer, were less stressful, were more successful, were healthier, and a whole bunch of good things that came out of it. And it makes me think, now today with my new initiative, that I applied our culture and our spirituality to everything I did. I was overseeing the education programs, the social development programs, the employment and training programs, the daycare, everything. And I applied our culture to all those things. And that's the same what I'm doing now today. As of a month ago, I was the Director of Community Development. And what they did, and I'm really grateful and really happy to be part of this, is they switched me over to work on this Kinder Morgan campaign full time. With the same ideas, and with the same ideas and the same philosophies, we've been first and foremost applying our cultural and spiritual needs to make sure we would protect the things that we love. I watched a documentary and I saw the CBC truck outside, and it made me think of a documentary that I just watched recently of my grandfather, Chief Dan George. He was sitting on the beach close to Kate's Park, and as he was sitting there, he said what I've been saying the last couple months, or the last actually 13 months. I said, I gained to grow and to love a spiritual connection to the waters that we have here. And what we talk about too is our lineage of where we come from. My daughter doesn't like the story because she thinks I mixed up the genders wrong. But how it goes is our first man was transformed from a wolf into a human being, a man. He got lonely and he swam down to the bottom of the inlet right here, and he picked up some sediment, and he came to shore and he put it on shore. And Creator changed it into a woman. And she goes, no, hey, wait a minute. And my daughter says, she goes, I think you got it wrong. We're the wolf, you're the mud. And I said, I can't change it. That's our legend. But that's our lineage of directly where we come from. And as my grandfather said, and those stories came from him, he sat on the beach in this documentary, And he said, the loving and spiritual connection that I gained out of this water was beautiful, how I was raised. And this was about 1971. And I was 1 year old. That was my debut on film, maybe, because I was a little baby in there. And it was about 1971, and he said, the spiritual connection that I got out of the water was beautiful. And he goes, what makes it sad for me is I won't have it for my future generations because it's changed already. And I've been saying that. I witnessed myself in my short time that I've been here that I seen things change. And it's evident when we look out our windows and we see the changes that are happening, where there's floods where there shouldn't be rain, where there's drought where there's supposed to be lots of rain, where there's snow where they never had it for hundreds of years. Nature doesn't lie. Things are changing all over the world, and a big, huge contributing factor is why we're here for what I feel tonight. Is, those tar sands, one of the biggest industrial projects in the world that are going around today. What they want to move, the earth they want to move, is the size of the country of France. The pipelines from 2000 to 2009 did 411 spills, out of those pipelines that are going through our lands. What we claim and what we say is the most beautiful place on earth, we hear that message coming out. One of the tourist magazines in recent years said the most livable place in the world right now is Vancouver. Our green initiatives of the city to be the greenest city by 2020, the idea of that, where people are coming up with beautiful ideas of solar panels and wind turbines and things to create things to be more green, could be wiped out by one action of one of these tankers that are going through our waters that are carrying 700,000 barrels of oil. They're only 1.6 meters from scraping along the bottom of the inlet. These are dangerous things that we as First Nations are saying it's too much to risk. Over 100 nations, from up and down the coast, up to our relatives who are also having the same battle with Enbridge, with our relatives that are having the same battle with Keystone. The First Nations came together and geez, millions of dollars have been talked about that have been offered to some of the nations that would really help some of our people to come out of poverty. But what I'm talking about is that spiritual connection that my grandfather talked about, that there's no price that we could put on it. There's something that if something was happening to my daughter or to my son, it was unjust and it wasn't good, and it's somebody who I loved so much and so dear that I have a great spiritual connection to, I'm going to do something about it. Geez, my daughter's so beautiful. A couple months ago, I looked at her and I said, geez, Kaya, I look at you and I'm so happy when I look at you. You fill my heart up and I'm blessed and I'm so happy just looking at you. And we were about to pick a movie to watch, and she goes, Dad. And I looked over, she grabbed my chin actually, and she made me look, and she goes, look at me, look at my eye. And she goes, Dad, when I look at you, I feel the same way. And I was like, oh, geez. She's over there right now, my daughter. But that's something that I would stand up for. That's something that I have a loving and spiritual connection for. As my daughter, I wouldn't let no harm come to her. And what we're talking about when over 100 nations signed the Fraser Declaration to oppose any pipelines going through our beautiful lands that we share with each and every one of you, we're going to say no. We're going to say no because we can't put a price on the destruction that can happen, that we witnessed and that we seen what happened in Kalamazoo. How unprepared they were. How much millions of dollars they spent on trying to clean up, and a successful cleanup is what they say is only cleaning up 20%. We can't have that risk happen here. We can't have it. I'm not the only one that Tsleil-Waututh right now, as it is right now at this moment today, Tsleil-Waututh standing up. And it's not just me that they moved from director into this Kinder Morgan campaign, it's 3 others. And we're doing it on our own, like that way. But what we're doing here now today is asking for your support. Because what I believe in, and I really believe in this, and I think we've been through this before. I think when the civil rights movement came about, that was a country of people that wanted change. wanted change for fellow human beings because we wanted something better. That people shouldn't be suffering, people shouldn't be hurting. We wanted something better. And I think it's now the same thing is happening today, where a country of a nation of people should stand up and say, we want something better for ourselves. We want something better for my daughter because, like my grandfather said, they deserve that opportunity to have that beautiful connection to the land like I do with her. And that's what you deserve too. Each and every one of you deserve that connection. You deserve that beauty. You deserve that spirit of that land to be alive and to be breathing and not to be smothered by some oil. We deserve that opportunity, and that's people, us here as adults. My daughter, I'm talking about her again. We went to elders gathering, and we put up an information booth, and we had a couple of thousand elders walk past her booth. And I said, Kaya, can I go get a drink and have a break? And she said, sure, Dad. And when I came back, I started listening to this elder that was talking to my daughter, and she goes, here I am, listening to you, and I should be making changes for you to make our earth better for you because you are our future generation. And she goes, I feel bad because you're teaching me, but I'm really proud of you. And my daughter says, you know what? It's not hard to talk about what I'm passionate about, and that's our land. We could take messages like that and apply them to who we are, and we could make a difference. We really can make a difference like they did with the civil rights movement. Except who we're saving now at this time isn't our fellow human beings, it's ourselves. We have to save ourselves. We have to open up and we have to look at the facts about what is happening and what is going on here. And what is going on here isn't good. It isn't good. And there are alternatives. To Tsleil-Waututh Nation, even before we even thought of getting involved in it with this, even before we knew what was going on, we invested it and we sell and we manufacture wind turbines. That's what we do. Thank you. Because we know even for our country, that it's 3-to-1 jobs, green energy jobs to fossil fuel jobs. If we could take those huge multi-million-dollar subsidies that our government gives to these fossil fuels and apply them to green energy jobs, that would help make a really big difference for us. There are alternatives. There are alternatives that we could look at, that we could help, so we could change, so we can make things better. Like I said this before, not just for my children, for my daughter, not just for each and every one of you and your daughter and your children, but the ones who don't know. The ones who don't know and maybe are lacking that spiritual connection like I have with my daughter, that lacking that spiritual connection to the land. Just like it's the same for me, that spiritual connection to my daughter, to the land, and that's how much I love it. There's some people that are lacking in that, and some of those people that are lacking in that are Kinder Morgan. And because they're lacking in it doesn't mean we're going to stop. Because they're lacking in it and some of our government are lacking in it doesn't mean we're going to stop. Because there's barriers in our way that are going to try to stop us doesn't mean we're going to stop. Because we think and we feel as human beings that we will change it for them. When the civil rights movement happened, there were people that wanted things to stay that way. They wanted things to stay that way so that they can continue to live their lives in an unhealthy way. But we're going to do it for Kinder Morgan too. We're going to do it for them because they don't understand. And maybe this is a time when my daughter could be standing up here years from now and saying, yeah, a movement happened. And they won't even talk about the problems of what were presented by, when we talk about the civil rights movement, the ones that didn't want the change, we don't hear anything about them in history. What we hear is a good change happen. And that's what we need as a country. We need it as a country because it's our home, it's our land. When they're not going to do anything about it, we will. I know we will. I know I will. I know my daughter will. I know my mother in ceremony who prayed for them. She prayed and she said, I know when they're sleeping, their spirit is awake. And she prayed and she said, I pray my spirit touches their spirit so they could realize and to understand that they're a human being. And in those ceremonies, what we talk about the fundamentals of humanity that are talked into this beautiful holy house that we sit in, this beautiful holy home that we sit in here today. Those fundamentals of love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, forgiveness, compassion, and understanding, and truth, and knowledge, and wisdom. Those are the foundation of what our country was supposed to be raised on. And now people use it to manipulate it to get what they want, and the things that are standing in our way, and what's apparent right now is greed. But like my mom said, we'll push that aside, and we'll say pray for Kinder Morgan so they can make changes for their future, because we deserve it. Each and every one of us here deserve it. And here's a prayer that I would like to finish with. I pray that each and every one of you here will be a pebble that's thrown into the pond. And you will too will be a mighty voice that will ripple out to the people, to your friends, and to your family, and to the ones that need to know and need to be a part of this change. I pray that will happen. Because being down in Brazil for the United Nations Summit on Earth, it was apparent to me that not much was going to happen there. But what was a blessing to me that changed my life, there were town hall meetings that were happening here in North and South America like this, and they were growing. The day after I left, there were 500,000 people that went out in the street that wanted change. A week after that, 500,000 people went out in the streets in Mexico that wanted change. And we want change, and I think we'll be a part of that movement. We'll be a part of it, and we'll join like we did with the Fraser Valley Declaration that connected the First Nations from northern British Columbia to southern British Columbia that said, as Chief Jackie Thomas said, created an unbreakable wall that no pipeline will go through. And that's what we need. Each and every one of us here need that. But also our Vancouver citizens, our British Columbian citizens, our Canadian citizens, we deserve something better. We deserve something better. So thank you very much, and give yourselves a hand.
I really appreciate the wisdom that Rueben brings us, and I appreciate equally the love that he has for his family, because that's really what's going to make a difference. And today we're really all one family here.